I'm PMH Atwater. I am a doctor. I lived then in southern Idaho. The real beginning happened in 1977, 3 times. I was raped. That's how it started. What do you do when something like that happens? The man left, and I just lay there in bed, very confused. And a month or more passed. I was pregnant. An older mother, to be sure. I already had 3 children, but suddenly I was pregnant. I was divorced. How do you define a pregnancy that just goes crazy and strange? And suddenly I'm in a lot of trouble. And I'm miscarried in my bathroom. And suddenly I find myself, in my case, the light was a light bulb. It was the light fixture in my bathroom. And I was suddenly twirling around the light fixture. And I could not understand what happened. And I was bumping into that light bulb. I didn't understand why I'm bumping into a light bulb. And I looked down and I saw my very bloody body and blood everywhere. And I was so confused. And the more confused I was, the more blobs that were in the air. I don't know what else to call them. Sort of like an ink blot, only they were fully dimensional, and they kept occurring in the air, more and more and more of them. And suddenly I was pulled back into my body. So it's sort of like letting go of a rubber band. It's like, whoosh, I was pulled back into my body. My first impulse was to clean up the mess, and I did. I cleaned up the mess, and I gathered every pillow that I could find everywhere and went to sleep. I can always sleep. I'm not one of these people that has trouble sleeping. I didn't have any problems sleeping. Went right to sleep. I have 3 children. My oldest, my son, was gone. The 2 daughters were still there. And the oldest came in Monday morning and shook me and said, should I call in sick for you? There must be something wrong with you and how you're feeling. And I was just sort of stunned, yet wondering about the whole episode and everything that happened and all what was going on. And then it occurred to me that I needed a doctor. I needed help. I don't know how I managed to get dressed and drive to my doctor's office. His office was only about maybe 5 to 7 blocks away, and not far at all, but it took me a half an hour to drive there. That's because when I got in the car, there were lightning bolts all over the windshield of the car, and I was seeing the houses on either side going up and down and undulating, and everything was so strange. All I knew was I had to get to the doctor's office. So I got there, I stopped the car and sort of get into the doctor's office. And the nurse there screamed when she saw me. And she said, "You look half dead." And she got me into the doctor right away. I told him what happened. And all he did was laugh. He gave me a shot in the right thigh vein, knowing I could not handle that shot. It was in his file. He knew I couldn't handle that, but he gave it to me anyway. All he did was laugh at me that I had this so-called pleasure at my age. He was later on sued by several patients. I was going to sue him too, and then I decided, no, I'll just leave this alone. But he gave me that shot in the right thigh vein and went home. Didn't have to go to a hospital. Go home. The minute I walked in the door, the pain in the right thigh ended. I went back to my bed, back to the pills. And the next morning, my daughter again woke me up, reported me that I could not go to work. The 2 girls left. And how do you explain a pain that is so rigid and all-consuming where he gave me the shot about halfway down the right leg? There was like a mountain growing. All around where he gave me the shot was getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And my whole leg was beyond pain. If I'd have had a knife, I'd have cut my leg off. I mean, it was that bad. And again, I knew I needed help. But this time, I was incapable of walking. So I crawled toward the only phone we had in the house, which was a wall phone hanging in the kitchen. We didn't have any other phone. So I crawled back. I got as far as the dining room, and I died again. Only this time I kind of knew the territory because it happened before. So I kind of knew what was happening. And I was up by the light fixture in the dining room, although the light fixture was not on. And I remember looking down at my body and wondering, I wonder if it's really dead. And getting down closer and looking around to see, is there any heaving and any sign of the breath or the heart or anything working? And nothing. So I went back up to where I was on the ceiling near the light bulb. And I kid you not, I remember twirling around and around the light bulb. I was so happy to be out of that body. I'm dead, I'm dead, I'm dead. And I was happy to be dead. And I remember all my thoughts were suddenly taking shape in the air around me, only this time they weren't blobs. They were beautiful, translucent bubbles. And I wanted to know more about them. And it occurred to me that, hey, thoughts are things, then I can make things. So I made a whole city. I did. Trash cans, fences, dogs and cats, people, all kinds of buildings and streets and trees. And it occurred to me that I can really do this. So I decided I would make a house. It would be 4 square. It would have a wonderful porch and a perfectly pitched roof. I really did this. I wonder, can I make an animate object? So I decided to do an oak tree, a great big massive oak tree with all these incredibly beautiful limbs and roots. And there it was, including insect holes in the bark. I just created everything I could think of, cities and people and dogs and cats and fences and cars. Suddenly, my loved ones who had died on long before me came, and I could visit with them, including a grandfather I had never met. And he came up to me and we spoke. And that was so meaningful to me. I never saw him before. I never had an occasion to see the man before. And there he was, and we could speak. And then Jesus came, my elder brother. I regarded Jesus as my elder brother, whom I had not seen forever. And there he was, and I ran up to him, and I hugged him, and we hugged, and we laughed, and we hugged. It was just joyful that Jesus is my elder brother. And then he left, and my loved ones left, and everything changed. I changed. And suddenly, my life, it's like a life review. I was able to see all of my life again, all the way back to babyhood. And I discovered we shared energy. Everyone I ever talked to, their energy was part of me and my energy is part of them. And I had the privilege, if you will, of being able to see how my energy affected them and how their energy affected me, and to go on from there to realize how my energy affected everything. The trees, the lawns, the plants, the soil, air, and that all of us, it's almost like a pea soup. That is to say, our energy and whatever we do affects everything else. And I saw a whole lot of things I was sorry I ever did or ever said. And it's like, oh dear. There were a lot of things I didn't like, and it was hellish in that sense that I never knew that every thought we think, every word we say goes out and has a life of its own beyond us. And I forgave myself. And in that forgiving, I floated back into my body as if on a carpet, all kinds of little sparkles. I floated back in my body, back to that body on the floor in the dining room of my home. And instead of going the remaining 3 feet that I could have taken to pull down that phone in the kitchen, I crawled all the way back to my bed and lay there in a stupor for a couple of days. The only thing that made any sense to me was money. Believe it or not, money. I had to go back to my job, my salary, my job. How I dressed myself and got in my car and drove all the way down to the bottom part of Boise, Idaho. I managed to park my car near where I worked. I worked for a bank, and go into the building. And my boss, fortunately, happened to walk by and saw me. And she was like the nurse at the doctor's office. She took one look at me and said, "You look like you're dying." So she got me to another doctor, a specialist. And he looked at me and he said, there's no way you can be alive. But I was. He didn't send me to a hospital either. He sent me home with these pills I had to take, like every 6 hours around the clock. And I did. I took those pills. And all kinds of strange things happened to me while I was taking those pills. And finally, I got some help. Finally, I was able to realize that something needed to be done. I was not getting well. So in taking these pills slowly but surely, I sort of got well enough to go back to work. I could only work like maybe a couple of hours a day. And while there, that man who raped me came back. And he said something to the effect that the only reason he did this was he wanted to see what would happen if he did something like another man had done to his daughter. He wanted to see what that would be like. In other words, he wanted to play act. And I was the unwilling victim. And that's all there was to it for him, was a play act. And then he left. And I was so shocked that I could be used like that, that I would even allow myself to be used like that anything like that could happen to me, that I died again, the third time. First time was January 2nd, second time was January 4, and now we were at March 29. And I remember ever so clearly going through the roof and seeing all the layers of what made up the roof, and going through the attic and all the layers and out into the night sky and going as far as I could. Just going and going and going, way out into the sky. I wanted to be elsewhere. I didn't want any part of the earth plane again. I didn't want any part of living again. I wanted to be gone, forever dead, forever gone. The earth was like a little bubble. I was way, way out. And there was this lip of light, and it seemed somehow to draw me. And I went into the lip and into a light I can't explain. There isn't light like that on the earth plane. Nowhere there is light like that on the earth plane. And in the middle of that light was incredible, huge cyclones, one inverted over the other. And out of the middle came a power. It wasn't light, it was power. I just knew that if I went into the middle, I would find God. I would find out what God is. I would find out what power is. And that was my goal. That was what I was involved in doing. In the meantime, back at the ranch, so to speak, my son had returned from a cruise school in the Atlantic he did not like, and he was home. And he had my car, and he went to the Black Angus, a bar. In the bar, tossing a few with friends. He didn't tell me this till a year later. And he got a mug up to his mouth and slammed it down and said, "My mother needs me. I have to go home." So he practically ran out of the bar, got in a car, and zoomed home as fast as he could. Now, you've got to realize how we raised our 3 children. They were raised to know that your center, your heart, and the whole center of you, that's where knowledge is. That's where truth is. That's where you contact that which is truly real. That's where you contact the real you, the God within you. So instead of hurrying to the phone, he instead went within. And that voice, there was a voice, and that voice said, "Sit opposite your mother and just talk. Doesn't matter what you say, just talk." Well, when you're dying, the most important thing is sound. You'll hear sound for quite a while. So I heard him. Had he gone to a phone and called police or help, that would have been the worst thing he could have done, because it would have taken a while for them to get to me. But by instead creating sound, that was the quickest thing he could do and the smartest. And I heard him. I heard someone loving someone else truly and fully and completely, unconditionally. And that caught my fancy, because I didn't know that was possible on the earth plane. And I wanted to go back to where he was and learn what he already knew. And in turning, I heard a voice. I call it the voice like none other. And that voice spoke, and it said, "Test revelation. You are to do the research. 1 book for each death." It did not name book 1. Book 2, it did name Future Memory. And the purpose of the book, reading the book, is to lift your consciousness up to the next highest level possible for you. It is a brain changer. The third book, A Manual for Developing Humans. That was its name. Human. Hue, like maybe 1,000 years ago or more, hue was the sound of God. So the purpose of the book to help you relearn how to think, how to relearn how to talk. And it's an easy way. It's full of thought form drawings. And the purpose of the book is to help you to be who you really are. We are all children of God. We are all co-creators with the Creator. This is what we're here for. We are here to be co-creators with the Creator. That's what near-death experiencers, most of them, discover. We are here to be co-creators with the Creator. Those are books that I was told to write and helped in writing by that voice. It took a long time to recover from all of this. I had to relearn how to walk, relearn how to think and feel and run and experience what life is. And it was difficult. It was very difficult. Later that fall in November in Seattle, Washington, they were having the Mind Miraculous Symposium. Some friends of mine decided that the best thing that could happen to me to help me get well was to go up to that conference. So I did. And the first speaker was a physicist from Stanford. And he was sure that everything happens at the same time, in the same place, that there really is an eternal now, and that he could prove it through physics. It flashed on this huge drawing through physics of what the eternal now looks like. And it was the exact same thing I saw in my third near-death experience. And I remember jumping up and getting out of that conference hall and sort of collapsing under some wall sconces. And all I could say was, I'm not crazy. I'm not crazy. He saw it too. I'm not crazy. And from that moment on, I started to get well and finally quit my job on the very day I was to get a promotion and gave away or stored everything I had, sold my home. The kids decided to live elsewhere. And I meandered across the United States, winding up in Washington, D.C., and that's where I began my work, my research. So I've done my work. I've done what I felt God wanted me to do. I was told to be a researcher, and over 44 years, that's exactly what I have done. I have done what I was told to do. I did my job. Any near-death experiencer, I don't care who they are, has an opportunity to see themselves in a different way and to realize there really is a force beyond us, bigger than us. You can call it God, you can call it whatever you want to call it. But that force, that source is genuine. It is real. People say to me, do you believe in God? Oh, I know God. And I invite you to do the same. Thank you.